What does the Biden ATF's engage in the business rule, the revocation of state concealed carry permits as background check alternatives, and massive taxpayer waste all have in common? The answer is Eric Epstein, an entrenched bureaucrat. And we're just learning from our sources at the ATF that he's been escorted out of the ATF's building. This is a huge win for gun owners and the Trump administration. So a big thank you goes to Attorney General Pam Bondi for cleaning house of all these rogue anti-gun bureaucrats. Today, we're taking a closer look at exactly what the mastermind behind many of ATF's unlawful and unconstitutional actions did before the Trump administration removed it. Hi, I'm Ben Sanderson, and you're watching the Minuteman Moment. But before we get into the video, I wanted to take a second to let you know about GOA's Annual Convention, Goals. The Gun Owners Advocacy and Leadership Summit is set to be held August 9th and 10th of this year in Knoxville, Tennessee. Come out and visit with some of your favorite manufacturers, participate in activism training, and hear from the top voices in the Second Amendment community. The best part? It's free for GOA members. So sign up today using the link in the description below. Okay, now back to the video. Eric Epstein was, until the other day, the Senior Policy Counsel for Firearms and Explosives at ATF, a position we're told that the ATF created especially for him, and he's been there for years. In fact, Epstein has been involved in numerous unlawful and unconstitutional gun control initiatives over the past few decades. For example, a recent story in Whistleblower reported that Epstein was the key architect and drafter behind Biden's engage in the business rule. According to this report, Epstein drafted 1,300 pages of material on how ATF could effectively ban private sales of firearms across the US. Thankfully, GOA was successfully able to challenge this rule in federal district court, and we, along with Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, got the rule enjoined before it could go into effect against our members. As the district court explained, the rule Epstein drafted clashes with the text of the statute. We are now waiting to hear for a final judgment from the district court, which, hopefully, will vacate ATF's unlawful rule nationwide. But GOA's engaged in the business lawsuit is not the first time GOA and Epstein have crossed paths. Back in 2019, Epstein also was the driving force behind ATF's revocation of Michigan, Minnesota, and Alabama permits as Brady alternatives. And in his direction, ATF seized the power to revoke Brady alternate status that Congress never granted to the ATF. But you may ask, what are Brady alternates, and why did Epstein want them gone? Well, as we all know, federal law requires gun dealers to run a background check whenever a person buys a gun. But federal law also provides an exception to this background check requirement for people who have a state-issued firearm license that meets certain criteria. These licenses, often concealed carry permits, are known as Brady alternates because they serve as an alternative means of satisfying the federal background check requirement imposed by the 1993 Brady Act. If your state permit qualifies as a Brady alternate, you can show the permit to FFLs when you buy a gun, and they won't be required to run a background check because you already passed one to get the permit. But although the statute clearly states the background check requirement shall not apply if a state license meets the Brady alternate criteria, ATF has asserted the authority to unilaterally decide which states do and do not qualify. And when the ATF giveth, the ATF taketh away. In recent years, the ATF has revoked the Brady alternate status of several state licenses based on nothing more than its opinion that Congress's exception might affect public safety. But those ATF determinations were unlawful, and GOA challenged them. Fighting against GOA's cases challenging ATF's revocations, Epstein filed declarations defending his work. And in them, he basically copped at being behind ATF's activities. I am employed as the Senior Policy Counsel, Firearms and Explosives, for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives, ATF, United States Department of Justice, DOJ. I've been in this position for almost 9 years, and I've been an ATF attorney for over 30 years. In this position, I review, draft, and interpret the laws and regulations within the authority of the ATF, including the Gun Control Act of 1968, GCA, as amended, and make policy recommendations to executive staff within ATF and DOJ. Now allow me to paraphrase. I'm behind everything bad ATF has done for almost a decade. Indeed, it's true. Epstein had his hands all over the Michigan, Minnesota, and Alabama Brady alternate revocations, with his name appearing in dozens of emails. On March 22nd, 2019, Epstein wrote, "It would appear that we're going to need to reopen the case on Michigan alternate permits." Then, on July 16th, 2019, Epstein sent a letter he had drafted revoking Michigan permits. As promised, attached, please find a draft letter to the state of Michigan and corresponding public safety advisory for your review and consideration. And on January 21st, 2020, Epstein wrote an email showing that he was the one behind ATF's related NICS Alternative Sampling Initiative, an unlawful and ultimately unsuccessful snooping program designed to give Epstein more justification to revoke the permits of more states. As part of this initiative, Epstein instructed ATF personnel to go to gun stores around the country and during compliance inspections, run NICS background checks on gun owners who'd use their state-issued permits to acquire firearms. Even though the law clearly states that no background check is required, Epstein instructed inspectors to run NICS checks anyways, after the fact. As Epstein wrote to ATF attorney Jeff Cohen, Jeff, the purpose of this sampling is to ensure that prohibited persons do not come into possession of firearms through the use of alternate permits. If a state is not running proper and complete NICS background checks when issuing alternate permits, then states may be issuing them to prohibited persons who, in turn, may be using them to purchase firearms from FFLs without a background check. We've seen this in Alabama, Minnesota, Michigan, and elsewhere. The IOIs will ensure that the alternate permits are recorded properly and rechecks to determine the states are in compliance with the Brady Law regarding the use of state permits as an alternative to NICS. Ultimately, Epstein's NICS resampling initiative struck out in spectacular fashion. Even after ATF inspectors combed through more than 250,000 Form 4473s, identifying more than 87,000 where a qualifying state permit had been used, and rerunning background checks on 5,249 law-abiding gun owners, ATF personnel were only able to find 2 instances where a person with a qualifying state permit was reportedly prohibited by NICS. In one of those cases, the person became prohibited after the dealer transferred him the gun. What a complete waste of government resources. But Epstein wasn't done after Michigan. He was also behind ATF's revocation of Alabama's permits. As ATF's Nashville DIO, Stephen Kolb wrote in February of 2019, Eric Epstein has been focusing on the criteria for alternate permits over the last year or so. And when another senior ATF employee wrote Epstein in March of 2019, suggesting that we need to immediately send the state of Alabama a letter informing them that we are rescinding our open letter and advising the FFLs to conduct a NICS check, Epstein responded, "I don't disagree." Later, Epstein spoke candidly to coworkers that revoking Alabama's permit might present a litigation risk. Obviously, since it's unlawful. "No problem," says ATF's Kyle Lawlensack. "Even if it's a litigation risk, I think it's worth pursuing based on public safety." So, like he had done with Michigan's revocation letter, Epstein drafted the Alabama revocation letter as well. Reporting on April 12, 2019, "Good afternoon, Marvin and Curtis. Attached, please find for your review and consideration a draft letter to the state of Alabama and an open letter to all Alabama federal firearm licensees." In other words, Epstein just can't leave gun owners alone. GOA has spent tens of thousands of dollars challenging Epstein's unlawful and unconstitutional actions in federal court. It's high time this anti-gun bureaucrat was told to pack his bags and hit the road. Now, thanks for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to stay up to date with GOA's latest fights for your rights.